All right, so this is going to be a short little video seeing if we can get to the bottom of performance characteristics of the books page with respect to lending status checks that we're performing when we go to various pages. So and what I mean by that is if we were to load a book such as uh, Robert Cialdini's Influence, which I'll do in a second, then I'm positing that because lending used to run on Open Library, not archive.org, way back in the day, we still have a lot of legacy calls that are being called every time we load the page. In fact, multiple times when we call the page, that can probably be cached and dried up and moved to the uh, upstream borrow endpoint. Okay. I don't know what that refresh was about, but the first thing I'm going to do is go to the logs, right? So that we can see what's coming over the wire. And these are the logs for OL dev 1 mech, I think. Yes. Okay. And then I'm going to click on influence, which is now loading the book page. And as that's loading, there's a few things that I want to point out here. Actually, you might be able to see some of what I was going to point out. Let me full screen this. Do you notice anything in the response here?
Yeah, let me see. So it's like we're making a bunch of loan queries for a single page.
Yes. So this first item is hitting this special endpoint designed just for Open Library, which requires special keys, which is archive.org services openlibrary.php. And we're asking for this user's waitlist given this book to see if this book is on our waitlist. Notice that the user ID is at XXX test3. We then make the same exact query to the same exact endpoint for OL colon XXX test3. This is because once upon a time, we used to have different accounts for Open Library and archive.org. And so the identifiers for their archive.org ID were different than the Open Library ID. We need to double check this, but I think right away we should be able to get away with just removing one of these. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Then we have a second thing down here, right here. What is this doing?
This looks like it's getting the loan, like the loan status for the user.
So it's getting the user's loans, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it does it a second time for their OL account. Now, one would hope that this is cached, but if I go back to the home page and then I click on Stephen King's It, we're seeing the same call again.
Oh, yeah.
So we're making 4 calls to archive.org every time we make a request to a book page for every user on the website. So I think step one is just figure out which of those requests is right. That is the IA account or the OL colon account, and remove the other ones. So we did this archive.org bridge between the accounts on Open Library and archive.org like 3 years ago, 2017, 5 years ago. Everything should be using the archive.org account, I think. Either way, we can start removing the the OL account. So the area to do that would be in. Do you know where those may be getting triggered?
Ooh,
There's a
would it
few
be?
places. So this is one of the rare cases where I'm asking because I don't have a perfect understanding.
So
But I know one of them.
the first thing that comes to mind is land name. I'm not even sure if that is that right.
Yes. Yes, sort of. The first place we're going to look is in macros loan status. Within loan status, we fetch the availability, then we get the archive.org ID, the OCA ID, and then down here we run check loan status. If we're performing a check loan status, which is generally true when we're on the book page, then it calls CTX user get waiting loan for OCA ID. So I think that's the first place where instead of doing this, I think what we want to do is just fetch their loans once and simply check whether this OCA ID is in their loans. Does that make sense?
Seems reasonable.
And then this one might be a little bit more complicated. The my turn to borrow. But we could do one step at a time. And so I think what we need to do first is take a look at. So this is one path. There might be other paths, but I think we need to take a look at this function, the get waiting loan for. We'll do a get grep for get waiting for, and this is in core modules, and it's also being done in upstream borrow, and as we saw, loan status. So not many places. So we can look now in, let's open up core models, get wait, what do we call it? Waiting loan for. Get waiting loan for. So this calls waiting loan find, waiting loan, which comes from waiting list. Where's that? Core waiting list. So we're looking for find. And it looks like this might be where we are getting the open library account, getting the item name, and then the result is either query the user ID as archive.org item name, like this is their archive.org ID, or this function that we're using to get their open library key. So this seems like our person. So I think we've tracked it down. So we're going to have to make a change to waitlist.py, which caches this value until we make a change. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So when do we want to invalidate the cache for this waiting list find function?
Probably whenever something is added or removed.
That's right. And that all happens in exactly one spot. So what we probably want to do, we don't want to overwrite find, right? Because I don't know all of the locations that are using find. So we probably want to create a new function that allows us to create a cache and break the cache that doesn't influence the behavior of find.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah. So we can make like a cached find function that calls find.
Yep. Or a separate function called, I think we were just in models and we were looking for waiting loan dot find or something.
Mm-hmm.
So right here, get waiting loan for.
Okay.
Let's see where this is called. Get grep. I think this is used in 2 locations. One of them we want cached, loan status.
Mm-hmm.
The other we probably don't want cached because this is where we're literally getting their loans within the borrow endpoint. Like this is the actual borrowing logic.
Yeah.
Although technically we could cache it because we would just need to break the cache before we get here. Okay, so I think the plan would be this function get waiting loan for should be cached to fetch a patron's loans and wait lists once every maybe 5 minutes, because it didn't seem like that expensive of a call. We just don't want to do it on every page load.
Yeah, 5 minutes seems fine.
And we want to break cache as a first step in
borrow.
Yes, and this is going to be plugins upstream borrow, which we can open up here. It's the wrong one. Plugins upstream borrow, and then the function for this borrow interface I think is right here. Is this it? Borrow I8 checkout with OCAID. So this has a get. If you go to the get, the only thing the get does is it sends you to basically do a post. And then here's the post, and then it sends you to borrow. So this is what we care about in borrow. And if we look down within the borrow logic, we will see that eventually we call this get waiting list. Let's see where we are. Get waiting list. Get waiting loan. Get waiting loan. Here it is. Under is user's turn to borrow. Is user's turn to borrow. And that is used within user can borrow addition, and user can borrow addition is used by our function borrow. So yeah, so that's the main hook, is when we call user can borrow addition, here we don't want to cache.
So we invalidate the cache immediately?
Shouldn't be cached. Either that, or we just have a thing that says like invalidate cache, and here we say invalidate cache equals true.
Okay.
Or we call this way sooner in the function. In any event, does this kind of demystify the problem in solution a little bit?
It does.
Okay. So just as a recap, the first file that we care about is the macro loan status. Macro loan status is calling this waiting loan. And then I think it's calling one other thing. which might have a similar pattern, which is loan status, check loan status.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are two things. Check loan status, which is get loan for.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first one we said was waiting loan for.
Yeah.
So waiting loan for and get loan for. And in both of those cases, that will be defined, I believe, on the core model.
Okay.
So here's get waiting loan, and what did we say the other one is? Get loan for,
Yeah, I think so.
which is also in here.
Okay.
And I think we're doing the same shenanigans for both of these functions of like calling everything twice. So step one is, even before we make any changes at all, we should just figure out which of these function call types we should actually be calling, rather than duplicating the network request twice.
Right.
That would take us from 4 requests down to 2 requests.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, we should figure out if there's a way to cache the results and bust the cache in plugins upstream borrow, the borrow class.
Yep.
Seem okay?
Yeah, it all seems seems pretty simple.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So we can break that into 2 phases. The first phase should be the easy one of, I think we need to do a little investigation to make sure that we don't delete the wrong one. But at this point, we've kind of gone through this process over many years of making sure every time someone logs into Open Library, their accounts from archive.org and Open Library become synced. And so that they have an archive.org ID. So I think at this point, there shouldn't be a case where we're using the syntax OL : whatever. All of those loans should be far gone, right? It would I think this happened like several years ago, and it would require that someone like logs into a super old account and still has a loan, and there's no such thing as a loan that is, a year old. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to stop recording, and then I will make this video.
Okay.